Hey, what's up, everybody? We're back on a Monday night this time for you, and as promised, we have the High Republic comic issue number 3. That's right, they just released the High Republic comic issue number 3, and we're going to review it right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So, looks like things are moving pretty good in the High Republic series. What'd you think of this issue so far?
It's kind of creepy. It's definitely got some.
I felt the same way. That's a great description because it's exactly what I was thinking too. I'm like, this is getting a little bit dark. It's getting kind of creepy and mysterious.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of. I remember you said that you want to kind of a horror vibe. This is definitely kind of giving you a little bit of that. Kind of has a little shop of horrors, kind of thing going on. I don't know, what the heck is going on here, but yeah, we got possession and all kind of crazy stuff. It's almost kind of like I said, kind of borderline Star Trek a little bit because it kind of gave me some Borg vibes a little bit, but.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been watching some episodes of the original series, and it's been kind of the same thing. Like you can definitely see that there's an original series Star Trek vibe to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what's cool though to me is that there's a definitive storyline. Like now I'm really locked into the story. You know what I mean? It's like I'm invested in it. I understand what's going on because like the first issue. I couldn't really place it in the context. I think that was the problem I was having. And then
especially with everything brand new, right?
Yeah, and then the second issue it was like, okay, there was a little bit more, and I was starting to see that there was a little bit more of a story forming. But then this issue, it's like, okay, now I get it because now it locks in the context of, like the first couple issues actually, which I thought was really, really. Really interesting the way that they're setting this up, and I really wonder where they're going because like you said, and we're going to go through this step by step like what we did last week, but it's really kind of interesting to me where they're going with this because like you said, it seems to just be going in a darker and darker and darker path.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of different elements going on here. You got to kind of have some kind of renegade stuff going on with Skier. You got some kind of like mystery, because you got these two different types of villains that's kind of surfacing or whatnot. And then, you got some different type of connections that we're seeing in the Force that's a little bit different too. So,
yeah, well,
this is going to be interesting.
I mean, we might as well, let's take you guys on this journey. And as always, chat along with us. And I guess it goes without saying, spoiler alert, because we're actually going to walk you guys through this issue. That's kind of the way we've been doing this thing. So the first thing that we see is that there's a little bit of trouble on Cedri Minor. Now, this is the planet that these guys landed on where they were trying to find some spores. Well, not actually spores. They were like the grain or whatever that...
Yeah, the grain, that they found on the ship, right?
Yeah, that they found on the Hutt ship. So why don't you bring us a little bit up to speed from issue 1 and 2, and then we could start to talk about this a little bit.
Okay, so
yeah, I was like, if you can't do it, I can do
it. So I mean, we kind of open up with Skier, in the middle of, I guess we kind of walk smack dab in the middle of a Jedi trial or a test, if you will, with Skier, popping out of nowhere, challenging his Padawan. Because the Padawan already kind of had this challenge of having to scale like these really, really tall, like bamboo type things to retrieve. Forgot what it was at the top, but they had to retrieve this thing. And then, of course, Skier pops out of nowhere. So now you kind of have to deal with that. And then we notice, of course, Skier is missing an arm. And you kind of wonder if that was like initially like a birth defect that happened during battle. Like you don't know where that kind of comes from. But then,
right out of the gate, they just started out like, I mean, that's pretty graphic and crazy, It's
Yeah,
because
it's
I
just like
thought the
how you
same
missing
thing
it.
you did. I thought, oh, well, it must be like some sort of birth defect. It's like, no, it's this other battle or whatever. You got it lopped off.
Yeah, and so you kind of find out that this whole threat of the Nile or the Nile, forgot how whichever
I
way you
think it is the
pronounce it.
Nile. I was actually looking this up because I was like, you know what? I don't want to mispronounce these guys' names
Hmm.
because now we're starting to get all these enemies, like you said.
Right.
And the problem
Yeah.
is that it's not like the Empire or anything like that. It's all these weird names that we're being introduced to.
Yeah.
And nobody has
So
names like Han and Leia and Luke or whatever. It's all, like
like
Skier and
yeah,
Keeve and
like that's yeah, Avar and
yeah,
A or
right.
Avar. Like I don't know. Like I need like a glossary or something.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
um, so we find out that this particular master is kind of from the Trandoshan, if I'm not mistaken, nationality, I guess if you will. Um, so he's kind of a hostile kind of guy, given by the the natural order of his species, and however, at the end of this, Padawan, Q kind of receives the green light to become a full-fledged Jedi Knight. And so then now we're kind of, thrust into episode comic book number 2, or issue number 2, I should say, where now they're up on this, they're investigating like this ship with the hut that's been, severely like just slaughtered,
Messed
basically.
up, man. When I saw the
you
panel
know,
of that, and if you guys miss any of this stuff, you could see our previous reviews. But yeah, that was pretty.
yeah,
And
like you never
again,
saw
that
like
was kind of freaky. That's something that you don't expect to see in something like this.
yeah, so this hut was kind of like, laid to waste basically, man. They wasted no time, gutting this thing. And um so but now you kind of start to see there's a bit of a mystery here because, as they're trying to figure like, okay, well, who did this? What happened? Scares once again confronted with the Nile, I'm sorry, with the Nile, and he kind of goes berserk a little bit. He kind of loses it, kind of has like a little bit of PTSD or something like that, where he starts going to town on this thing instead of trying to bring it to justice. He's kind of like, kind of that Mace Windu, like he's too powerful to be left alive type thing. And he's just going to town, which is very dark. And of course, he starts trying to cover it up when people start asking, some questions and things. So, like, oh, well, could you have avoided it? It's like, no, it was unavoidable. I had to, and it was like, well, that's not entirely accurate.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that they're doing that because
Yeah.
the Jedi have always been so cut and dry.
Mhm.
I mean, you either have dark side users or you have light side. I mean, yeah, sure, Mace is a little bit different in the sense that he has some of those characteristics, but I like the fact that during the High Republic, it seems like the Jedi are kind of all over the place. As far as
Yeah,
I mean, there's the core root philosophy, but they're in all different viewpoints and in practice how they follow it. It's and then they're chastising. Well, you shouldn't be like this, and I mean, it's really interesting to see something like that in this group, and we haven't even been introduced to everybody yet. I mean, if you actually go and look at the High Republic, especially if you look back at when they were introducing like all the Padawans and Masters. I mean, we've only met a handful of these people. So
yeah,
so far so
definitely. So we got kind of that, but then they kind of notice that this they're looking for like this particular barley or this particular type of wheat
Yeah,
that's
it's like
kind
a
of
grain,
instrumental.
but
That
what's that stuff
it's
called?
like
That the Bacta precursor. It was something like kind
revive,
of yeah.
revive, rejuve.
Rejuve, that's it.
Yeah,
I
that's what it
remember it
was.
was something like, really, guys?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's like rejuve. Yeah, so um so yeah, so they kind of find this and they're like, okay, well, this is not something normal that the Huts would be, dealing with. This is not their normal MO. Once again, Jedi are still kind of like policing the galaxy in a bit. So this is kind of not a Hut consistency. They're usually into like firearms and spices and stuff, of course, but not to this degree. So of course they kind of land on this planet and to kind of do some more of investigation. And then things get a little hairy, where they have these twins who are definitely connected in the Force, and Tarek and Sarek. Yeah,
Yep.
Tarek and Sarek.
Yep.
And Sarek, kind of goes off because Tarek was kind of injured a little bit, kind of in the whole fray of everything. But Sarek kind of goes off to, investigating, trying to see what's going on, walks through some, wild, tall grass, and just gets yanked out by this weird tentacle from God knows where. And now we kind of have him missing.
Yeah. So now it's basically picking up, it's basically on Sudrey Minor, but now some things are starting to happen. It's kind of like, first it's opening up where, because Kiev was basically was concerned. I think she was the first one probably that actually saw something. I mean, the comic actually opens up a little bit where the, Tarek is talking a little bit about it, but, I didn't want to put every single panel on this thing, but I mean, this,
right.
As usual, what we're going to do is, hit the major story points. So there's definitely some trouble on here because, and what was really weird to me in this scene that we're showing right now is the fact that it's kind of like you got all these citizens trying to bake them all this bread.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was kind of funny because they're trying to be cool. But did you think there was something a little sinister about that?
I didn't. I mean, I figured if something was going on in the sense of either they're really hospitable, like maybe they work at Texas Roadhouse or something. I don't know. They're just trying to bring some fresh, bread or whatever, some cinnamon butter. I don't know, but either that or, or I'm thinking okay, I need you to do something for me, and this is our way of payment. Okay, I need your help, but this is our way.
I don't know the way that and that's pretty much I think what it ends up being. I mean, they never really go too much into it, but it is because there's that one guy, I can't remember his name. The one that basically was trying to tell him to get off the planet in the first place.
Oh, what is his name?
That's right. We're so prepared for this.
Well,
we didn't say these were comprehensive reviews. These are more like overviews and reviews, but
not only that, but I mean, we're still learning all these people.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, we only got this issue. I mean, I was only able to read it a few days ago too, so it's still kind of sinking in. But I want to get these reviews out too. Well, first of all, because everybody else is going to get them out. I don't want to fall behind. People are on issue 4 and we're still doing 3. That kind of happened with 2 last week. But there's definitely a vibe to these guys where you're not really sure where they're standing. I mean, you want to, and that's ultimately what I think it is. I think you're right. I think it was just them trying to be cool, trying to be like, hey, we need your help. Could you guys, here's some bread. Now can you go find our kids, right? But but it's just
Kalo Solomon, that's his name.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And he's the one that's always trying to, kind of stop him a little bit, but
yeah. He doesn't really want the Jedi there.
No, and it's funny how he keeps warning everybody off. So at first you're kind of thinking, is this guy overbearing, and is he trying to hide the fact that he's really abusive and almost dictator-like to the Jedi, and he doesn't want them interfering in his little operation?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get that vibe. He's kind of like, why are you so, apprehensive?
Yeah.
When all they're trying to do is, but then again, I can understand too, because, they probably have their own little hookup or setup, where, they're trading stuff, and they just they want to kind of keep things under the table, so to speak. It's like everybody doesn't need to know how the hot dogs are made. And right. I think with the Jedi snooping around and everybody knows the abilities of the Jedi, I think that's kind of causes for great concern.
Well, but I mean, the thing that I think is so brilliant about the way they're writing this thing is the fact that it could go either way. you really don't. It's almost like the citizens, in the way that, at least in the way it's being presented in this issue, you really don't know if this is like some sinister kind of like, Get Out kind of thing.
That's a good analogy.
I mean, that's kind of the vibe I was getting.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like, are we living like this intergalactic Get Out, or are they being, legitimate, and they're just kind of like what you were saying, basically just trying to be like, please get our kids out. Here's bread.
Right. We don't have much, but we do have bread.
Yeah, we don't have much, but we do have some bread. I mean, and it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I think that that's definitely something that, without a doubt, is we don't usually see that in Star Wars, actually. That's, like you said, almost more like a Star Trek thing, where when they're interacting with the citizens, there'd be that little... I mean, we kind of see that with Qui-Gon in The Phantom Menace when he first meets Shmi.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, it's almost like in the world of Star Wars, everything is macro. It's like everything is very wide and broad, and I think that's because of the whole war thing, whereas you don't usually see them interacting with like these little groups and basically the average citizens of the Republic, which I think is kind of cool. But, I think that ultimately, they're really setting this mystery up to be kind of cool. They're really, because you don't really know. And then that kind of goes into the second part where the children are missing. And as we were talking about, they're trying to get these guys to, please find their missing kids, because that was one of the things that I think a lot of, if you're reading through this issue, you could sometimes forget. You get so focused on the Jedi mission part where they're looking for the grain and trying to find out the mystery of what's happening to this thing. Because remember, it was rotting, and they didn't really know why. And the Jedi are trying to figure that out. And meanwhile, you have the Rodian, and then you have, what's the dude's name? The leader guy. This is so crazy.
Talking about Solman?
Yeah. You have him trying to swear off of them, like, hey, get away. We don't want you around. And it's really interesting how they're approaching this. Because the Jedi, you would think, would be all about it. But one of the things that I've always noticed, and again, this goes back to the Qui-Gon thing, where you would think that the Jedi would work on freeing Anakin, right? Like, oh, he's enslaved on Tatooine. This is an injustice. We're going to do that. But they're like, we got a mission. That's not why we're here.
Well, yeah, not only that, but I mean, you also have the fact that, they're out of their territory kind of in a way, because
the
Outer Rim is,
the
whole Outer Rim is not really their area.
Yeah.
But people just kind of know, okay, well, the Jedi kind of come around. You could kind of, that's why people kind of are a little bit able to kind of talk back to them and be a little mouthy and slick with them, because, well, this is not even really your area. What have you been doing out here?
Yeah, it's like a cop out.
You guys belong to the Republic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so
I mean, they're establishing that the children are missing, which I thought was kind of cool, because, again, you have this overarching mystery, and I absolutely love mysteries. And they're doing such a great job at presenting this. And then, of course, it goes on that Keeve decides to go off on her own, and then she, one of the little kids from the village basically follow her. What's his name? Bartol?
Yeah, Bartol.
Yeah, Bartol.
Yeah.
So, hey, I remember that one.
Yep.
But, and then they come out, and I swear, when I first saw this, I'm like, dude, is that like a Sarlacc in the middle of this thing?
Yeah.
I totally thought that's what that was.
Yeah.
But they're coming
or
on
like that
this.
that alien from Empire that was in that cave.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what I thought it was, too, a little bit.
Sure. I mean, it looked mysterious. It looked like it was a little bit more like a living thing. It didn't look like it was just a big hole, basically, which is what it is.
Agricultural thing, yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing that's kind of cool about the way that this thing is going is the fact that there is like this mystery going on. You have, and it's a multifaceted one. You have the mystery of what's going on with the children, right? Because they're like, well, our children have been missing. We know that Sarah, one of their own, one of the Jedi twins, he went missing. And now you have this crop that's being basically rotting for
just giving off this foul stench, and
yeah, exactly.
You know, they're just, and no one's around. And you're just kind of like, well, what the heck? Like,
yeah, and nobody really understands it, and that's one of the things that, you know, is definitely, I think, really cool. You know, Ronaldo saying, "Hey guys, hey man, good to see you on here." We had to acknowledge Ronaldo. You know, Ronaldo's with us every week, so yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't, you know, if I didn't say anything. But yeah, I just think that, you know, this whole crop thing mixed with the children thing, I think they're just doing a really good job of setting this up. And I was really...
and then there's actually another mystery that kind of eventually unfolds, probably in a few moments here too.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, though, we're leading up to it.
We'll get to
we'll get to that in a second. But
get to the airman in a minute.
First of all, I like this whole scene here because I thought that this was a really cool thing where the Jedi, again, you see them in this different light. Now, one of the things I should point out about the High Republic comic series so far is there's a lot of humor in it. And, you know, we pointed out, I think it was the last review we did, where a lot of the humor is very organic. It's even more organic than the normal Star Wars humor. You know, it's like, it's very natural. It's very almost earthly. Like stuff that you would say if you were presented with these situations that they're in. But I think that it was really cool that, you know, this kid's like, all right, cool. You know, and he just dives in.
Yep.
I mean, he wasn't even thinking
just
about it.
Jumps in.
I'd be like, dude, you don't know how deep that hole is.
Deep that thing is.
You don't know, what's down there. You have no idea what's going on. And you're just all like, okay. Now, granted, he is from the planet. So, you know, I guess if any, he would probably know more than they would.
Yeah, he feels a little bit more comfortable. I thought it was cool. You know, of course, Keeve using the Force to grab the kid, you know, Bartol. And
which surprised
you know, I was like,
me.
hey.
I actually thought he was going to jump in. But then when they sort of showed him like suspended there, I was like, well, how's that happen? Believe it or not, stupid me, it didn't even register. I'm like, how's he just floating? Oh, I had to read the...
Well, it could have been anything. I mean, something could have been down there that was like anti-gravity or something. Like we didn't know at the time, you know. So it could have been a machine that was causing that type of phenomenon. So I can understand why you might wonder that.
Yeah, well, and this is one of the things that I thought was really cool is the fact that much like how Anakin viewed things, there was a big trust there that he has for the Jedi. So the Jedi definitely have a reputation across the galaxy that they're these good, noble people, you know? And I just think that it's really cool that they still have that, but yet there's certain reasons, though, like I was saying before, where they act a little bit suspect at times, and I think that, you know, sometimes it's easy to mistrust them. If it were me.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, anybody walking around with this type of a power and ability, you know, you're always going to kind of like wonder because, you know, like much like we said with Batman versus Superman, you know, Batman had a good point. It's like, well, yeah, you know, they're using their powers for good now, but what happens if one of them decides to just go rogue or just, you know, say screw it and just becomes a terrorist or something? Like, who's going to stop them? You know, whose polices them?
Exactly.
You know, so, and I can understand, like, from a human perspective, you know, that those emotions even exist out in the Star Wars realm.
Yep. So now Ronaldo basically says, I thought the kid was going to be annoying, but he's actually funny. And that was the thing that I thought, too. I thought the exact same thing. I thought he was going to be this totally annoying, like, oh, here we go. But that's something. I thought it was
Anakin like 2.0 or something like that.
Yes. But it's actually more like, Those like little fairy-like creatures that were in the first issue.
Oh yeah. Now
Remember?
that I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember their names. I mean, but the thing is, they were kind of the same way. I thought they were going to be annoying, but they were actually kind of funny. And that's something that I found is sort of like a common thread throughout this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where what they're doing is they're taking characters, and again, I attribute all this to the planning. I think the fact that they're planning this thing out and they're not going for the cheap laughs. They're not going for some of the obvious
Over the top silly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like some of the silly over the top stuff. What I like about it is that they're actually going for things that are, once again, natural, organic, and he's just a kid. He's kind of funny.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely get the that's why I even said, like, this past Friday, I really think that because of the humor has Taika Waititi like all over it, because
Yeah, you know what?
this is kind of
when we
it's go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so this is what happens when you call instead of in the studio. But basically, yeah, when I was reading this issue, I thought the same thing. That actually strengthened. I remember when you said that Friday, and it basically was replaying in my head, like, man, he's got to do this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's cool because it kind of has this kind of has a Thor Ragnarok vibe to it. That's what it kind of reminds me, just in a Star Wars universe, and that's why I feel like this is definitely a Taika, project.
Yeah, without question. So basically, my mom's saying that I think having this a mystery is cool. Everyone loves a mystery. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think has been missing from Star Wars, actually, because Star Trek has had mystery. Like almost every major sci-fi or fantasy franchise at some point will have some elements of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that this is shaping up, it's engrossing. And it really is playing like a mystery. It doesn't just have mystery elements.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, and you're absolutely correct that it has the mystery overarching feel versus Star Wars mysteries are like, okay, who's Rey's parents? That's a mystery, but you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not really a mystery.
Right, or is Darth Vader really Luke's father? Or, they're usually family stuff, Yeah,
it's kind of like, well, all right, but this actually is a mystery in of itself. Except for like maybe the Phantom Menace. I mean, if you really think about the prequels, that was kind of a mystery too, because they felt the dark side, but they just didn't know, okay, like, well, first it was like, which one did we kill, the master or the apprentice? And then, all right, then I guess they still felt the dark presence. So they was like, well, I think it's the master, but then.
Right, but that had mystery elements.
Right, exactly.
Whereas this is more of a straight up mystery. Ronaldo basically says, there are things in this comic that I imagine being creepy in live action, like the autopsy, the crazy twin, and the corpses. Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what we were saying. You probably hadn't joined us yet, but that we were saying that at the top of the show, where it's like, this is pretty grim and dark, like right away. I mean, there's some things that are definitely creepy that if these things were in live action, you would totally be like freaked out a little bit, I think. And that, of course, leads us into this cover-up. So speaking of the autopsy, we're going back into this thing now, and there seems to be a little bit of a cover-up going on. Because they're not entirely, it's almost like, what's the guy's name again?
Solomon.
Yeah, why can't I remember that? It's like it's blocked. It's, it's like some mental block.
But force blocking it from you.
But there's like a twofold cover-up going on. It's kind of like there's him almost further just really wanting these guys to stop their investigation into this, which makes you wonder how complicit he is to whatever's going on down there. And then the second part of the cover-up is you have Skier, who, like you said before, just went ballistic and kind of dark side-ish a little bit. And, definitely was letting fear and anger and whatever control him. And he's trying to downplay it. He's trying to basically lie about it and cover that up. And so you get almost this whole mystery conspiracy, almost, I think you even said that this has a little bit of elements of a political thriller in it too.
Well, yeah,
and it definitely does.
Yeah, it definitely has the political ramifications just because of the Jedi's position of what they are to the galaxy or the community. It's kind of like, well, these are your keepers of the peace, but yet they are behaving in a manner that's unbecoming, so to speak, of a Jedi. And so, of course, you don't want to get that out, so you're trying to cover that up, and
Yeah,
it definitely has that kind of political vibe to it.
Yeah, and I just think that that's one of the things that, once again, is really cool, is they're hitting this thing from all sides. Ronaldo basically says that there are things in this comic that I imagine being, that was something that he had already said. But it's worth repeating here because, again, with this last panel with the cover-up that we had, you have some things where you just can't help but think that there's something underneath the whole fabric of this, basically this mystery that they're establishing, that you're just kind of going, where's this going? I mean, I don't know about you, but the whole time I kept saying, like, man, where's this going?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
definitely.
That's one of the things that I think is just awesome about the fact that, they're really weaving this web, and I have a feeling that this is going to be in depth. Now, I know that when they're done with this comic series, they're going to go towards, I think they're going to splinter off the story a little bit. Like, they're going to...
Yeah, I think they'll jump to a different group of Jedi and Padawan.
Yeah, and maybe even slightly different time periods or something. But anyway, so after you're getting a lot of the sense of this cover up, and some of this stuff is happening, and you're like, man, just when you think of where it's going, then you find out that Sarah's been found. All right, so Keeve and Bartol were looking around, for these guys, and then they basically find him. So, but they find him in a little bit of a weird way. You can even see in the bottom panel, like, there's this little worm thing coming out of his ear, and
I know.
I mean, again, this is some creepy stuff, man. This is like Alien now that we're...
Yeah, and while you're going on to that, it kind of has that Independence Day vibe too, because we haven't touched much on it, but with Tarek being on the ship, he's really going through it because of his connection to the Force with Sarah. He's been like spewing out like all this black clouds of crap, and he's like going psycho, and everybody's trying to figure out. Even this is where Scare's plot even thickens a little bit, because they're like, well, why didn't you notice that this whole dark side presence is coming out of him? Like, you didn't mention this at all, and so...
But again, and this is, I think, where the mystery is coming in. Do you think, though, that that's an intentional cover-up, or do you think that a lot of these guys are just trying to figure this out themselves?
I think it might be a little bit of both. I think where Scare, he's probably so fixated on trying to cover up his crap that he can't focus on the fact that this is going on. Mm-hmm. I think they kind of go hand in hand a little bit. And when we find Sarah, of course, like you said, it's got a whole alien thing. He starts talking not from himself, but through something else is using him to communicate. And so, like I said, it kind of gave me that Independence vibe where, grabbed, Brent Spiner's character, Dr. Oaken, and was like using his throat to talk for him. And, this is kind of, like you said, alien, creepy, mysterious thing that's kind of taking place in this cave.
And I've got to say that when I imagine the High Republic series, I never imagined this. It actually makes me really
not at
eager.
All.
Exactly. Like, I cannot wait now to get back into the first. I don't think I don't think I bought the second one. I know the second one, I think, was released at the end of February. I don't think I bought it, though, but I did buy the first one, The Light of the Jedi. Yeah, I can't wait to
Mhm.
get into that now because it
Right.
makes me wonder, and I'm sure Ronaldo could probably answer this because I know he's read it. I'm still finishing up Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rise. It's like the longest title. And it's so good. And I'm like maybe 150 pages or something away from finishing it. So I'm very close. I cannot wait to get into this High Republic book because just from what we've been introduced to in the comic series, I mean, I couldn't have even imagined that we were going to get a story like this. And I mean, I'm invested. So after Sarah's been found, now we meet yet another enemy, another hard to pronounce name, the
Right.
Drenger or Drenger
Yes.
or whatever. Hey, well, how do you guys think you pronounce this? Leave that in the comment section below. I'd be really curious on like everybody's take. Everybody phonetically spell this thing. And of course, while you're there, like the video. But now these guys, I mean, you want to talk about stuff that horror movies are made out of.
Yeah. Things that go bump in the night,
Yeah, man. When I turned the page and I saw this thing, I was like, wow.
Yeah, this thing is craving meat, and then it's basically saying that, like, I can't, like, you basically can't destroy us. It's like, it's talking through Sarah, and it's basically saying, like, okay, well, if you're not food, then you become one of us. And it's like, it's very Borg like of them. It's kind of like you will be assimilated.
Oh man, yeah, I know. That was the thing that was really creeping me out. It's like, okay, well, are you going to be one of us, or are you going to be food? And I'm like, man, you talk
Like,
about
that's a
like
heck of an
going
option.
just dark, man. I mean, that's like, yeah,
And then the
that's
thing
crap
looks,
we've never seen in Star Wars before.
yeah, and this thing looks like, from Little Shop of Horrors, like, feed me, Seymour. Like, that's
That's
what
what it reminded me of too.
yeah, man. I'm just like, it's like a Yoda version of it, though.
Yeah, I was just like, whoa, what is this thing? And I mean, and this is a thing too, man. I mean, now I'm not trying to dog out the Jedi that we've seen but the Jedi that we know and love have never, to my well, all right, I won't say that because Attack of the Clones
Vader.
did have those like freaky creatures.
Oh yeah, Vader's gone up with some creepy things too, and like in the comics at least.
Well, yeah, in the comics, but I'm talking about like in the
On screen.
Yeah, and it's true. You got me there. Vader has gone up against some pretty crazy enemies in the comics, but
then remember those creatures in the sea from Phantom Menace, man? Those things were freaky too.
yeah.
Like, can you imagine trying to pilot one of those little ships and you got
I forgot
that
about
thing
that
swimming
too.
at you? Yeah, man. It's like,
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, these are just the kind of creatures that, again, I mean, and they'll look at it and go, oh, it's whatever. And I mean, for me, I'd just be like, I'd probably die of shock or a heart attack. I mean, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself at that point.
I would just need the biggest blaster I could find.
Yeah, you would have to do something. But I mean, they're meeting these guys now, and so now not only do they have the Nile, but now they've got these guys to contend with. And again, the mystery's deepening because now you're wondering, okay, are these guys responsible for the missing children, or are they responsible for the crops?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's definitely both, because it's got the tentacles, and that's what we last saw that snatched up Sarah.
Right. We know that it's what snatched up Sarah, and
then it's also controlling and possessing him basically. And then, I can understand why this thing is underground, so it's probably siphoning off. It's probably trying to crave nutrients, and it's probably trying to suck down whatever the barley.
Well, that's what
crap
it is.
is.
It's like, what's the end game of this thing?
I think it's kind of like one of those, like those freaky little creatures that's just like, okay, you don't expect, to live there, and then now you just got to contend with it.
It's crazy. So my mom also, as a result of this, she's like, I'm buying 2 High Republic comics. Well, you better do 3 because this is issue number 3.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to do like you're gonna have to do the 3rd one now. So speaking of all that, now we're gonna go back onto the ship. So now we see that Skier's basically now in trouble. Everybody's in trouble in this thing. Because this is what you were talking about before, too, where it's like Tarek starts spewing this, whatever that crud is,
Yeah, black.
dust or black mold or whatever all over him. And, and they're
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
about a lot about the light and dark, because like Skier has now basically calmed down and, kind of decompressed. But what I find interesting is that there's the stuff that's happening on the planet and the stuff that's happening on the ship are not mutually exclusive. And to me, that's what's really exciting about this, is the fact that they're really tying in a lot of these things. Like, you could see that something's definitely unfolding, but you have no idea what it is.
yeah, Avar, I think that's her name. Avar, like she's like, really trying to pinpoint like what's going on kind of on the force side of things and kind of just really trying to see, okay, of course you got Tarek on there. He's just like going, nuts because he's connected to Sarah. And of course, Sarah is being kind of possessed by this thing down there. And so it's causing all these crazy ripples, but it's like, but because of that, it's kind of like the catalyst or the conduit to show like, okay, there's deeper things going on with Scared. Like, why didn't you, sense this being a master? It's just all this types of stuff. Yeah, I'm just, the plot thickens.
Yeah, and I really like the whole High Republic version of this stuff too, because usually when we're dealing with Jedi, they're usually dealing either with some governmental thing or they're dealing with dark side force users. Now, in a way, these Drengir things do actually use the dark side of the force, it looks like. But at the same time, it's different. It's different from any of the other things that we have seen. And it's just really exciting to me. I mean, this is like literally a page turner.
Now, let me ask you this question. So, looking at the Drengir, like, we all kind of know that the force, as you said, like, this thing actually has the force because all living things have the force within it, right? So if this thing is using the force, but this thing looks so massive, right? And it has a lot of moving parts to it, like tentacles and like hundreds of those things. So what we've learned kind of like from Anakin, like, all right, because it has, it lives within your cells and things like that, by this thing being so big, is that why it's so powerful?
I mean, it could be. The thing that's really hard to understand is, on one hand, you want to say that the Force, the more mass you have and all this stuff, the more powerful you could be. But then, you have Yoda, judge me by my size, do you? He's like ultra powerful, and he's like this little 2-foot thing. So, I mean, it's
true.
It's one of those things that, and again, this whole High Republic thing is going to really, it's almost like we have to revisit that whole meaning of the Force, balance of the Force thing that we did, I don't know, last season or something.
A year ago.
Yeah, we were talking about all this stuff in depth because obviously the High Republic era is going to shine a huge light on the Force and what it means. And because, I mean, even Rebels, right, when we met the Bendu, it's kind of like, oh, well, all right, we kind of knew that there was like a gray Jedi kind of thing. But this is the first time in canon that we ever see anything that's neither light nor dark. They're kind of in the middle. And it's just that shone a light. No pun intended. But it's kind of like you have now all these different elements and characters and things like that that are being introduced. And you're like, well, okay, where does all this stuff fit? And how is that expanding the lore of the Force, the nature of the Force, and all this other stuff? I just think it's really fascinating. And speaking of the Force, and you kind of alluded to it, before, and we've been talking about it, we're basically full-blown seeing the dark side looming here. Because, and at this point, it's Sarah that's pretty much like trying to, get his bearings and all this stuff, and it's like, go, and, you have Keeve down there, you have all this stuff, and then you have the Drengir, and it's just, it's trying to, like you said, act very much like the Borg in Star Trek. Like it's trying to assimilate. It's either going to assimilate you or it's going to eat you.
Yep.
Not much of
One
a
or the other.
choice. One or the other.
Exactly.
And so you're left basically wondering, how are these guys going to deal with it? Because that's the thing that always fascinates me, is when you see this overwhelming force or whatever that are against your protagonists and you don't see a way out. I always love movies or books or anything like that. Usually movies, though, because, you see it a little bit more visually. But I always love it when you're just looking at the protagonist in a situation and you can't see any way how they could possibly get out of it. You're like, well, I wonder how the writers are going to accomplish this, because you're not seeing any way out. Like, you're kind of thinking to yourself, you know what? If somebody were really in this situation, it'd be over.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you make a very, very valid point. And, I think this is where we're going to kind of see the might and power of the Jedi start to kind of show itself a little bit, with Avar and Keeve kind of, coming in. Well, Avar kind of came into the rescue to kind of save Keeve and all them.
Yep.
So, backup is definitely on the way. So now I think we're going to see the next one is probably going to be, some really good Jedi times.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Because I think that it's one of those things where, first of all, it's almost like The Mandalorian to me. So at the beginning of The Mandalorian, remember one of my biggest problems is he was getting his butt kicked all over the place, and then there was that point to where there was a turning point where he was going to show you that he was powerful, and I think that could definitely happen in this case. Ronaldo says, if you ask me, Skier is acting worse than Anakin in front of the Jedi. And yeah, that's one of the beautiful parts, I think, about this whole thing, is the fact that these guys obviously don't have it figured out. And it's really interesting to me what's going to happen now that their face, it's kind of like you said, they could come in almost like with all sabers blazing and they could end up showing their power, which I think is actually going to happen. And again, this is why I'm really curious now to read The Light of the Jedi. And I forgot what Claudia Gray's book is called. But basically, it's part of a trilogy, right? This first...
Yeah. I'm talking about
these first novels, Light of the Jedi, Gray's book and stuff. I think it was like an initial trilogy. Well, even with the 2 books that we got, I can't wait to read them because I'm really curious on how they tie in with this comic series. And are we going to see anything like... I remember Ronaldo had once said that, at least when we were reviewing issue 1, it was basically one of those cases of, okay, you see the beginnings of some things that happen in 1 that are elaborated on in the comic. So I'm really curious on where the novels fall in relation to this comic. I just think that it's going to be a really cool thing. And of course, we end up ending this particular issue on yet another cliffhanger, where he's kind of up against it. And
it's the name of the book, Claudia Gray.
What?
Into the Dark.
Into the Dark. Of the book, yeah. That's it. I remember it was another one of those things too. And again, that seems to sort of go.
And it does sound like it sounds like a Star Trek name too, like Star Trek Into Darkness. Like, I mean, I'm just saying.
I know. Well, no, I mean, it's fine. Because look, I mean, it's well-known fact. We're both Star Trek fans. It's not the ST word. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of times fans tend to, they get really cranked up if you mention Star Trek. Like, they're really hardcore. It used to be, and I think it was worse before, where it was kind of like you were either a Star Wars fan or a Star Trek fan. But I think a lot of that stems from the fact that Star Trek is purely science fiction. Mm-hmm. In every sense of the word, and Star Wars is really more fantasy.
Right.
with some sci-fi elements. And I think that stuff that would appeal to a sci-fi fan, they would be more into Star Trek than they would Star Wars. Where people that maybe lean a little bit more towards the fantasy type stuff would probably lean more towards Star Wars. So, it kind of evens out. But even though I think both of us really like Star Wars a lot better, I mean, I love Trek, man. And I think it's great that they're introducing some of that maybe a little bit, which is something that I actually thought would happen when J.J. Abrams had taken over for Force Awakens.
Right.
I thought maybe what he was going to do for Star Trek, when he wasn't even really a fan of Star Trek, I'm like, oh, imagine what this guy's going to do with Star Wars. And I mean, he did, admittedly, make a very great film. But I'm with you. I'd like to see Taika Waititi tackle the High Republic.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This seems right up his alley.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just think that, this has got him written all over it. And so, Skier basically is pretty much in this thing, they sort of have control of him, and he's like, they're speaking through him. And so now you're wondering once again, I mean, it's almost like I cannot wait until the next issue comes out. Because every single time, and this happened to me with the last issue. And if you think about it, they're sort of similar. I mean, the last issue ended with that tentacle reaching out towards Sarah.
Right.
And then, of course, he was missing. And now this one, they basically have control of Skier. And it's like, okay, well, what are they going to do now? So, yeah. Overall, I just think that, this is a great, just a fantastic entry into the whole High Republic series. I think that this is definitely one of those issues that really stands as a shining example of what good comic book writing can be. And I remember at first I was a little, and you and I had teased it when we were doing our whole issue 2 review, where it was kind of like, oh, did we really like it? Find out. I mean, part of that, though, was at the time that we were promoting last week's show, I still hadn't really processed how I felt about it yet. I don't know about you, but I had to actually read it a couple of more times.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it definitely kind of causes you to kind of go over or glance over it again, just to really try to understand and try to get the vibe, because you don't know where it's going really until like around this episode, this issue.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, the other thing, and I think I even read this, I think I read it like twice or whatever. A lot of it too is that when you're reading comics that had the familiar characters, you already have all the context about their characters and stuff. They're just in newer situations. So you can take in the information, I think, a lot better.
Easier.
And a lot easier than this. This, it's kind of like you said, you're kind of in a whole new environment, and, it's kind of crazy. So Ronaldo is like, the only thing that Star Trek is similar to in Star Wars is the word star. But he's a Star Trek fan as well. And then he's like, I'm really enjoying the High Republic. I want to see this in live action. You and me both. And Daryl thrice.
Yep.
Because, I just think that this thing is just ripe for live action. I mean, I haven't been this excited for something Star Wars related probably since the The Mandalorian, exactly. Because they've introduced something, and again, when the first issue came out, I'm like, it's good, but I really wasn't sure how I felt about it yet. And then the second issue, I started putting things a little bit in context, and I had pieces, and I'm like, okay, now I understand that there's a story here. But now, with issue 3, I'm fully invested. And I'm really looking forward to issue 4, which is probably coming out, I don't know, like next month or something, or a couple weeks. I don't actually remember how they're doing this. If they do these things like bi-weekly or monthly, or, I just, I'll get these notifications. And a lot of times I get so busy anyway I mean, between producing the show and the job and all that, that it's kind of like, man, you know what? Oh, another High Republic issue. And now
Yep.
we're halfway through, by the way. We're actually
Mm-hmm.
halfway through this run because this is a 6-issue run. So really makes me wonder what's going to happen. And even more, I really wonder where they're going to end this thing. You know, like how it's going to end and where it's going to pick up. And so what are your final thoughts on this issue?
Final thoughts are just I like the creepy vibe. I like they're taking Star Wars in a different place, but I think people can, because we've moved so far away from characters we know outside of Yoda, which we haven't even seen that much of, which
Yeah,
is
right.
cool
He
in a
just
way.
popped in
Just
like,
knowing he's around. Yeah, just knowing he's around, but you know, I think that you can now, and I can also see kind of Ryan Johnson doing like something like this,
yeah,
ironically.
especially this issue.
Exactly. This particular issue, I can see Ryan Johnson doing this as well, because this dark is kind of in his wheelhouse too, and that's what I'm saying. Like I can understand why, if he were to do a trilogy or if he were to do something in this era, like it would make sense to me. Um, I think the stories are cool. I think I'm waiting to see a little bit more in depth about these actual characters. Though. I mean, like we getting scared, but like Keeve and the twins, Sarek and Tarek, like I want to know more about them. I want to know more about this High Council. And I know it's only the third, issue, but it's just kind of like I'm already at that point where you want to just like I want to know these guys so I can understand like, oh, okay, and kind of see if I can make comparisons to people I've already known before, or just make them have that relatability, if you will. But this episode was really cool. I mean, episode. I'm so used to television now.
I know.
Um,
I know. And we
but this
always do the
issue of it
reviews.
is yeah, this issue is really cool. I'm curious to see what I think. Maybe by next issue, I might be able to figure some pretty much kind of how this thing is going to end. But I kind of have to see where they go from here. So I think maybe episode issue 4, I can actually kind of maybe see this thing through.
Yeah,
But I'm excited.
it is, and it's very exciting, and I think that it's going to be really cool because this is one of the few, I mean, other than the Darth Vader comics, really this is the first Star Wars comic in a while where I'm like, man, I cannot wait to get the next one. Or when I get to the last page, I'm like, wait, that's it? I want more. And this is going to be ripe for, because usually what they'll do is when they do a series like this, then they'll basically bind them into like one issue basically, and this is perfect for that. This thing could totally be a graphic novel. So, I think that they knocked this thing out of the park. But more importantly, though, what do you guys think? Did you guys like it? I mean, we know Ronaldo likes it. So, we know my mom likes it. She's going to run out probably now and buy the first 3 issues.
By all 3.
It's always great, too, when you have family watching because, usually family is usually the most critical of you. But when they actually really enjoy watching, that's kind of nice, too. But, yeah, what do you guys think of, if you read issue number 3, let us know what you thought of issue number 3. Let us know what you guys thought of the whole High Republic series. Is it something that you're into? Do you want to see it in live action? I mean, there's so many things that we covered. Let us know your thoughts on the whole High Republic thing. And while you're leaving the comment, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you can learn whenever we're coming out with anything new, which generally we're streaming every Monday and Friday at 8 o'clock. We will be back with you guys this Friday at 8. I have no idea what we're going to talk about yet, but that's why you need to come and watch it for yourselves. So until then, I think that's going to wrap it up for our show tonight. And, of course, we'll be bringing you issue number 4 when it comes out. So remember that we're going to see what we could do. I'm going to be out of town next week, so there may or may not be a Monday show. We'll have to see how it goes. But until then, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.